Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beginning of Wisdom podcast. In this episode, I get to sit down and have a really good conversation with Paul Ryan. He shares some of the stories of what it was like to grow up in a really unstable and alcoholic household. Even through that, though, there were some really fun moments for him and some key figures in his life that came as a rescue when he needed them. I won't spoil too much, but I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, Paul Ryan, welcome to the Beginning of Wisdom podcast.
Yeah, privileged to be here. And can I just say well done for launching this? Because I think, I just love the name.
Thank you.
Yeah, Beginning of Wisdom. It's not an arrogant name. It sounds like someone in search.
Yeah.
And it sounds purposeful. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to include some element of like a Bible verse or a Bible reference. So it's the second half of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, great.
But I
like how you picked that up till you just said that. Wow, excellent.
Well, I like that you picked up on that it's the beginning of wisdom. Like it's not, we're exploring, I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm a bit of a younger host. So yeah.
You never go wrong remaining humble.
Yeah. I thought I'd begin with the question, what do you think the difference is between wisdom and knowledge?
That is a great question. I don't know who schooled you up on that, but that is a great question.
Yes.
Interestingly, I think often this world gives a scent to clever people, and we equate value and worth to someone who's got high intelligence, who might have a lot of knowledge, or people who can win game shows because they know so much, etc. But knowledge is just that you know a lot. But it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have if you can't apply what you know. So the key difference I would suggest between knowledge and wisdom is knowledge is knowing what to do, but wisdom is actually doing it. So you could know what's best to do in a situation, but if there are character flaws, if there are unfinished places in your heart, even though you might know what the best thing to do is, you might not make that choice out of self-interest or fear or some other place that's unresolved in you. You don't take the wiser path because it won't. There'll be unresolved areas of your heart that will cause you not to do that. So I guess, bottom line, I'm not very impressed with smart people. What I'm impressed with is, it doesn't matter how many letters there are after their name, it's will they tell the truth when a lie would save them? And that shows a level of trust in a holy God to back them.
Yeah.
You can't buy that kind of trust or wisdom. That something has to be earned over a long journey. So the difference between knowledge and wisdom is knowledge is knowing what is right to do and what is best to do, but wisdom is confined to those who actually choose to do what is right.
Sounds like where an education and some character would converge.
Yeah. Look, you could be the smartest guy in the room, but you could also be the most terrified person in the room, or the most arrogant person in the room, or the most addicted person in the room. Intelligence has no parallel, or I don't know if that's the right word. There's no real correlation, I think it's probably a better word, no correlation really between intelligence and character. Yeah, they're completely separate beasts. Yeah. So great question.
I wonder who told me to ask that them.
Top of the tree, that person. Should get them on for a podcast.
Yeah, might just do that. Well, I thought it'd be nice to just kind of take a bit of a journey through your story, because I've had the privilege to hear it a couple of times, and I think there's a lot of incredible things that you've learnt along the way that you've also been able to hand to others, in the way that you've come alongside people, including myself. And yeah, you didn't grow up in a typical Christian household, and I think that in many ways that shaped you profoundly. But then encountering God along the way has, I think, led to a profound like turnaround, but with more glory that God can offer others through you because of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, would you like me to just jump in somewhere there, or you got a specific place in the story you'd like me to begin?
Yeah, just go from where you would like to begin, I suppose.
It was fun, just as you were sharing, I was just thinking how, like, at the risk of sounding crude, like I should have been a fetus in a bin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because my poor mother in her scenario with the difficult life that she had and the pain and the hurt that she had suffered, you know, she, on a day when she was very angry with me, explained to me that there may have been an inference that she probably wished she had followed through on not having me, which,
Wow.
and the way it was worded suggested she strongly considered having an abortion.
Yeah.
And in her situation, you know what? There were a lot of women who would have chosen to, falling pregnant out of wedlock and not wanting to wear the shame of that. So I'm very grateful that my mother chose to have me. Otherwise, yeah, I would not be here. And I wouldn't have been blessed with the marriage I've got, nor the life I've had to live to date, nor would I have been blessed with 6 children. You know, the roll-on ramifications of that. Just, but I think, you know, you've heard the term, I'm sure. You're actually, you know, a trophy of God's grace.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how amazing it is to think that He could shift a story from someone who could have been, you know, a dismembered, you know, fetus thrown away, to someone who has the privilege to share a story of a life rescued, and then bring something of that same rescue that God has to offer to others.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing, really, isn't it, when you think about it? Quite the privilege. So, yeah.
So what were the circumstances around that? What was the...
Yeah, so my mum and my dad were both alcoholics, and they had met and entered a relationship, and in that my mother had fallen pregnant outside of wedlock with me, and she came from a fairly staunch Catholic background and clearly didn't want family, on her side specifically, to know about her failure in this area, so to speak, morally. And so what she did was, her and my father ended up eloping to Queensland. So in and around the area in New South Wales where they were from, and that location, they suddenly just sort of, I was getting all this, by the way, to be fair, secondhand from aunties and uncles who pieced some stuff together, but there was clear evidence that they disappeared to Queensland as a couple driving up there.
Yeah.
And then returned some time later with a baby in arms, having been married in Queensland. Some further evidence many years later, I discovered that I was actually born out of wedlock because I went to get a driver's license one day, and on the birth certificate there are certain numbers and letters at the bottom which I asked about when I was handing my birth certificate over at the Main Roads Department in Queensland. I said, what does that represent on a birth certificate? And this person nonchalantly just said, oh, this means that. Oh, and the last 2 digits are the year your parents were married, you know. And upon closer look, the year that, for those of interest, I was born in 1964, but the last 2 digits on the birth certificate were 65. And I'm thinking, you know, maths wasn't my strongest point or subject at school, but even I deduced that it looks as though I might have been born before they were married.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. I remember going to my poor mum and saying, "Mum, can I just ask? I'm just a bit confused about this." And when I raised it with her, she exploded because obviously the shame about that and not wanting it to become known. And so I quickly got the message, bury this and don't raise it again. But interestingly, she never denied it. And but yeah, so mum and dad, I think they were trying to find a way to make this work with some integrity, to get married and eventually form a family and move forward. But in their own hearts, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't resolved. I mean, you don't turn to some, addiction unless there's pain in your life you want to run from and don't know how to face the truth of what has caused all that. And so they were in a bit of a mess in a pretty short space of time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of yelling, and I recall as a little toddler just some of the verbal violence in the house. And, you learn to sort of react to that, as that loud. Anyone who's suffered under that, you often see people today when someone starts to shout, they cower or curl up because there's trauma that's not dealt with there. And I certainly knew that as a child. But actually there was even, some physical violence and pretty much domestic abuse. Not a lot. In fact, I only really have one memory, to be fair, but I would suggest there might have been a pattern. But it was the last time my parents were together, and it was in the lounge room of a unit that my parents were renting in New Farm in Brisbane. There in that house there was an argument, it escalated, and my poor dad in a moment of anger struck out, and I'm sure he would have regretted it, and he punched my mother in the stomach and she doubled over and went to the ground, and he just grabbed a set of keys and disappeared out the door. And I just remember, but in the lead up to all that, I was hiding behind a couch and trying to pull my little brother on a bouncing bassinet behind the couch to try to avoid all the violence.
Yeah.
Little did I know when he walked out the door, that was the last time our family unit was together.
Wow.
So it's a big deal when the most important man in your life walks out the door. And there's a lot of ramifications to that. So, yeah.
When was the next time that you kind of had any kind of relationship with your dad after he walked out?
Yeah, well, so remember at that age, you're not kind of in control much, right? So, and you have much to steer life with. But I have memories of my father coming back on some reasonably regular basis. And by that, I would say every 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Again, time as a toddler is hard to measure.
Yeah.
But later in life, as I started school, those were the sort of windows where he would show up. So, but I do have recall of him coming back to take us out for days at the beach or things like that.
Yeah.
But he relocated. So we were in Brisbane, and he relocated to Toowoomba, where his mother, my grandmother, owned a house and was residing. And his father had passed away, I think, by the time I was 2. Although interesting, I still have a memory of, I used to call him Pop, in Toowoomba out the back of the yard. And so he lived then with his mother and got himself a taxi license driving for Garden City cabs in Toowoomba, well before Uber ever existed. But he would drive down and then take us out for the day. And so every month to maybe 6 weeks or so, that would take place. So there was some reasonably consistent, connection. If you call, once every 6 weeks, good investment for a day. But I do remember at times because back then there's no mobile phones, right? We're talking the 1960s. And so if he couldn't make it, there was no way of really letting us know easily. We didn't have a landline telephone in the house. We didn't have a lot of money. My mother didn't own a car.
Yeah.
And so his car was his taxi cab. The vehicle he drove for work was his car. And if we drive down, we'd go off to the beach in a taxi cab. It's funny how many people try to hail you on the way to the beach. But there was, in that, it was lovely to have the investment, but the reality is, it's funny how when you're growing up, you don't see it as not normal. It becomes normal to you.
Yeah.
You don't realise, I'm in a dysfunctional family where there's been a break in the marriage, and there are things I'm missing out on.
Yeah.
And it's amazing you just start to compensate for the way things are and accept it as this is okay and normal. But for me, I still remember at the time he moved out and left, I still recognise, and there was a sense of like buying into a lie that if the key man in my life that is here is supposed to be present and guiding, protecting, is no longer here, then I am on my own. And another interesting dynamic to that is that my poor mum, because of the failure of a lot of men in her life, starting with her own father, who was a very austere man, who very performance-oriented, very good on the athletic field in just about every sport going.
Yeah.
The guy represented the nation in multiple sports. I mean, another story altogether, exceptional sportsman. He also exceeded in business. And my grandfather once said to me, Paul, this is my mother's dad, Paul, the best committee is a group of 3 people with 2 absent. Which was his way of saying he liked to control things.
Yeah.
And had to be his way or the highway. And so she got raised under that guy, right? So that's a wound. Then the boyfriends that she had, obviously, had left their scars and on my mother, and this erosion of trust in men, was well underway.
Yeah.
She got married first time, and that didn't work out, and she lived in fear for many years that man would resurface somewhere. And in fact, my mum's whole life was riddled with fear, but you don't see that as a child. But yeah. And then she married my dad and had 2 children to him, myself and my brother. She just had a lot of key males in her life fail her. So apart from the fact my dad's abandoned us and walked out because he can't handle my mum and the mess she's in, my poor mum hated all men. And in all honesty, for good reason, because just about every key man in her life had failed her and let her down or betrayed her in some way.
Yeah.
And so she was really angry at all men. But like as a young boy being raised by a woman who hates all men, like that was terrifying. She was very volatile in her reactions and her verbal responses. So it was pretty scary as a kid. So I grew up fearing women. Yeah. And I soon learned that your mother tends to be the mold by which you then learn how to relate to a woman. Right?
Yeah.
That's how it's meant to be. And so if your mum is not in great shape and she's carrying a lot of hurt and pain, and there are things that she inflicts upon you that wound you as a son, then you carry that into all of your relationships with women. And so all I can picture is that there's not a safe woman on the planet, and if I have to make sure there's a very good arm's length between me and every woman I come across, and I need to control that relationship because these women are scary, and I need to find a buffer between me and them to make me safe. So that I was not relating well to women in any way whatsoever, and I certainly had no dad around to show me how a man should relate to a woman.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing to model off and learn that from. So, the word dysfunctional is absolutely appropriate, but you just don't realise that as a kid. It's just like, this is just normal. And then the outworkings come later in your other relationships. Yeah.
So were you conscious, like you articulated that really clearly and really well in hindsight, I suppose, but how conscious were you of all of this kind of, these things that you were buying into as a bit of a narrative of life?
I'd say I had no conscious awareness at the time.
Yeah.
I think what would be an honest perspective as I look back, I think it's like, okay, how do I survive? I think that would be the summary. What do I have to do to survive? Because remember, my mum was also trying to earn a living to pay rent, buy food. I mean, like, how hard would that have been for her as a single woman in the 60s?
Yeah.
Like, I was going to daycare, like in the 60s. There weren't too many daycare centres back then. Today, they're on every corner,
Yeah.
right? Today, if you're not sending your children to daycare, you're the weird one. But back then, it was rare for someone to go to daycare. And then those who were at daycare were there because of all sorts of issues and breakups and dysfunctional scenarios.
Yeah.
And so daycare was not a safe place. Let me tell you, it was a battlefield for the toddlers, all coming from broken backgrounds. And but how's this? You want to hear a funny story on the side?
Yeah.
Like,
go for it.
In this survival mode, you tend to look for ways to cope with life, and the controlling patterns you develop that you master later in life that can do a lot of damage in relationships, you start developing those far earlier than you care to admit. And I remember I always observe and always watch and see when I would get dropped off my mum at daycare, what the patterns were, how the doors open, what that looked like. I still remember watching when they'd lock the doors, when they wouldn't, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
And then I saw a window one time of opportunity, knowing there was a gap in timing and also in location. If I could be in a certain window at a certain time and near a doorway, when people would walk through there to take someone in, they'd always leave the outside door open and the actual swinging door not locked again.
Yeah.
And I just literally pushed through and walked straight outside onto a street. I wouldn't have been through. I'm pretty sure I'm still around that age of 3.
Wow.
I might have been moving more towards 4, not yet in school. And I walked up this street, got onto the main street, which is called Brunswick Street in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane, if anyone knows that, right near this brewery.
Yeah.
Still remember the smell of the hops, and so I don't even know whether that brewery's still there. I'll have to check next time. It was close to the Story Bridge in Brisbane. And I just turned and started walking towards home because I knew the direction, right?
Yeah.
Because back then, funny how kids today, they get a license and they go, hang on, how do I get there, Dad? And I'm going, what? You don't know how to get to where we've been on holidays every year of your life? No, I was on my phone. I was on my device. Back then there wasn't any. We always knew the direction because we'd always watch out the window. So I just knew where to turn, start heading home. And I'm pretty well into this journey. I mean, for me, in all truth, it might have only been 200 metres, being 3 or 4 years of age, but I felt like I'd made some distance, right? I was well on my way towards home.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this truck pulls up on the side of the road. And I thought, why don't I ask this guy if he'd give me a lift?
Wow.
Because then I don't have to walk. I thought that was pretty clever. What I didn't foresee was that this guy would ask me questions like, where is your mum? Where did you come from? Now, I saw this guy as an ally. Turns out he wasn't. And I realised by the time I'd said, I've just come from the daycare centre, he then literally turned me around, took me back and handed me over the counter to him. And you should have seen the look on their faces when they realised one of their kids had escaped whilst under their care. Within a week, the entire front face had all changed. They brought carpenters in and changed the entire thing. There was no getting out after that. I started looking around the fence in the backyard then after that, but the front escape route had gone forever. But my point in all that story is that in trying to survive, I was always looking for ways I could control the situation to try to protect me. And I didn't feel safe at that daycare.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get out of there, get home, at least back home. Mum might have been loud and a little bit scary at times, but at least she fed me and I was kind of at least semi-safe at home.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get away from that. And so just, I think a lifelong pattern of trying to protect me started very early in that. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So as you kind of grew up and you went through school, what are some of the more, I suppose, those moments that have shaped you further as a young man?
Yeah, well, what if I just jump in a little bit early before school?
Yeah.
Because in some of those earlier years, still in the toddler age, my poor mum wasn't coping with 2 kids and no dad around.
Yeah.
I still don't know how she even managed to survive at all with holding a job down. She was a nurse, so it was shift work. So working night shifts, and so I'm very grateful for that. I don't know how she ever managed it. But there were times clearly when she did not cope because at one point there she, struggling with the second child, my brother and me, she turned back to, some drink to try to deal with what was happening in life. And but when it really got to pressured situations, she recognised she needed help. And probably one of the few people that she reached out to, which may not have been the wisest choice, was her own mother, who was the one who, her own mother was probably a worse alcoholic than my mother was.
Oh, wow.
And so when her mother came to care for us, or at least actually it was me she was caring for, my mum would move away and let her look after me, or she would hand me over to her mother to care for me. So she only had one to deal with.
Yeah.
But in two situations, at two different times, I was put into the care of my grandmother. And because she wasn't coping with having a toddler around, she turned to alcohol. And on two separate occasions, you'd think you'd learn the first time, wouldn't you? But no. She wiped herself out and drunk herself into a stupor and fell unconscious. Right? And on two different occasions, she was taken to hospital with alcohol poisoning whilst caring for me. Right? But how's this? On both occasions, nobody knew there was a toddler in the house.
Wow.
So she gets taken away to hospital whilst I'm in the house by myself. And like, I remember when the ambulance showed up the first time, I have very little recall. What I do recall is, some flashing lights outside and me hiding in a cupboard. So I wasn't too sure. I was thinking police is all I knew of flashing lights and sirens at that age.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking danger, hide, run, survive, protect self. She gets carted away, and when I come out, there's nobody there. I thought, oh, problem solved. But 24 hours later, when my grandmother comes out of the, self-induced coma through alcohol, she says, "Where's Paul?" And only then do they wake up. Paul? Who? What do you mean? My grandson. I was minding him. So then, someone comes knocking at the door to come find out where little toddler Paul is.
Yeah.
It's not great care, is it, for a toddler to get. And so, again, just the level of fear and anxiety that starts to escalate in a little boy's heart, that I have to protect me because no one else is.
Yeah.
So then I get to school and, the inevitable bullying comes in different ways at times. But I think ultimately I'm not a great student. Turns out I'm reasonably bright. Who knew? But when you're spending a lot of time emotionally trying to survive in this world, you haven't got a lot of space left really to focus on studies and to do well at school, even if you are, average or above average intelligence. And so I never really did well at school. And then I started to work out that if you did do well at anything at school, that wasn't the greatest way to be popular.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, okay, so any good marks I was getting, I soon had to learn not to get good marks. Although interestingly, in Australian culture, and it's still somewhat true today really, if you excel at sport, everybody loves you.
Yeah.
So then I'd start looking in primary school, what sports could I do or play or things I could do to excel. And so there were some things that I did focus on that I did do well at. But I think most of my school years were again about survival. How do I survive at school? How do I avoid bullying? And how do I find a way to get the acceptance of others so they'll like me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So you were mentioning how you were even thinking of that in primary, like fast forwarding throughout high school as well. Is that still what you kind of gave your focus to, like sports and just kind of fitting in?
I felt more comfortable in my own skin as I moved into secondary school, but not because the masks were working.
Can you unpack that a little? Like what is a mask and like what does it do to kind of serve a purpose there?
So by and large, if we don't like who we are, we tend to find ways to survive in this world where we create a persona or act in a certain way to get the acceptance of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I found if I was the life of the party, the one who could make others laugh, or if I was good at particular sports, I could get kudos and applause and appreciation from others who would see that as valuable. And so some of those means were ways in which I learned to behave in order to get acceptance. And so at school there were certain sports that I excelled at, and when it came to like the life of the party kind of thing, if I could be the funniest guy in the room and everyone's laughing, well, other insecure people remember the funny guy.
Yeah.
It's only the people who have any weight or wisdom look around and recognise that guy's wearing a mask. But everyone else who's wearing a mask probably wants to be the funny guy.
Yeah.
And so the problem with that though is, Levi,
What's that?
when someone else comes into the room that's just as funny or funnier than you, and they draw all your crowd away. And the insecurity of that, So, oh no, I'm losing my crowd. He's funnier than me. And so you up the ante to try to, duke it out with someone by trying to do stupid things to get attention.
Yeah.
But I think I would summarise it as those years were about see me, love me.
Mm.
If I could be seen, whatever I needed to do to be seen, then I would be loved. Then people would accept me, and so I think most of my energy was going towards that.
Yeah.
So the masks I wore were trying to be the funniest guy. If I wasn't bad at swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Competed at a very high level in swimming. If I was okay at rugby, not the best guy on the pitch, but not bad. And so there was, the capacity to mix well with guys in that arena. And then surf lifesaving, carrying the swimming over into, anything water sports, wasn't bad at. Also very good at water skiing. I used to be involved in tournament water skiing. And so that was, so those things, if I focused on those things and I got some sort of level of appreciation or, applause from people, because in Australia we tend to give that to our sporting heroes, don't we? We see it on television all the time.
Yeah.
There's some guys who are extremely good sportsmen who excel at their craft, but you wouldn't want to be married to them or have them as a father, would you? So in that culture, if that's where the appreciation's found, I've got to find a way to perform in that area to get the appreciation.
Yeah.
So most of my high school years were spent probably focusing on those things. And, believe it or not, well tanned, well muscled, had hair, and it was blonde because of all the time in the pool with the chlorine. And for those looking on YouTube at the video, when I did have hair, hard to believe, it was I was a skeg because I spent a lot of time at the beach as well.
Yeah.
That was probably most of my life. And when things like that, when those masks are working, no one ever thinks to lay them down, do they?
No.
Why would you put aside something that's making you popular or working for you, or you find acceptance in those things? So it's usually only when a mask isn't working, when the false self that you've created begins to fail you, do you then start to ask questions? And that was some years before that started to happen.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned getting into things like water skiing. How did you get into that, given that you were kind of being raised by like a single mum who was...
Yeah, with no money.
Yeah.
And water skiing's not a cheap sport, right?
No.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Very perceptive of you to pick that up. So my grandfather, my mother's father, he may not have been a very good dad, but he was very good at business, and he did still have a sense of value around family and pulling everyone together at Christmas time. There was a pretty large family home that he had constructed down at Narooma. By the way, he had a major construction business, building, and that was his industry. He grew a company to the point where it got listed as a public company, and he was doing rather well financially. He owned 2 big grazing properties, he had, there was a decent cash flow.
Yeah.
And interestingly, for anyone who remembers, all the travel lodges around Australia, he built all of those.
Wow.
Heck, he even built the Parkes dish. One of the contractors significantly involved with NASA putting all those things up. So he had he had a little bit of pocket money because of his success in those areas.
Wow.
And he had sons, 2 sons and a daughter. His daughter was my mother. The 2 sons, one of them was a PGA golf professional.
Yeah.
And the other one took up a trade with him as a builder. Interestingly, side step for a minute, that uncle started his own business and stepped away from my grandfather's business. And I couldn't work out why he wasn't working for Granddad anymore as a kid. And I said to him one day, his name was Graham. I'd say, Uncle Graham, why aren't you working for Granddad? And he paused and he just looked at me and he just said, well, mate, old Granddad, he's a hard man to work under.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant answer at the time. I was just thinking as a kid, didn't really have a clue what he meant. Today I know exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
But because of that an extended family backdrop, my grandfather was able to fly us down for holidays in New South Wales because we were based in Brisbane at the time. He lived in Queensland and around the ACT Canberra area, and that's where his business was established and set up. And he would fly us down. And ironically, even though I lived in New South Wales, I was a member of the New South Wales Water Ski Association because all my water skiing was done with my Uncle Graham, who owned a water ski boat.
Wow.
And I would ski with him and whenever we'd come down. Mostly Christmas, sometimes other times of the year around Easter, etc. But those windows were there for long enough where I would get some really good coaching from him. He was an exceptional water skier, particularly a brilliant barefooter. And so I too learned to barefoot and enjoy that sport and to excel at that. And but also just did slalom skiing and trick skis and just areas of tournament water skiing that were, also there was, the ski jump.
Yeah.
So I learned to do all that. Wasn't my strength, that one, but the reality is that they, ironically, this grandfather and these other 2 uncles, I probably got more fathering from them than my own dad, courtesy of those windows of time when I was around them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't necessarily all have been good, I can assure you, what they were teaching me. Some of the conversations around fires or barbecues with beers in hand and what they might have been imparting to one another that I would sit in and listen on. But at the same time, there's just something about being around men that imparts something by osmosis that I wasn't able to get from my dad because of his unavailability and not being around. But to be invited into family at Narooma, which is the town we were, where this house was that my grandfather owned, the holiday home, in the backyard listening at the end of the days, water skiing, enjoying stories, being in the presence of other men, even though exactly what they were sharing and talking about may not always have been holy or good, there was still just something about the fellowship of masculinity that was pouring something into me that I don't even really know how to fully articulate, that was of value to me, that I felt seen in their presence because they allowed me to be on the outer fringe of that.
Yeah.
But certainly when it came to the water skiing, the investment given to me there was significant. The coaching, what I'm doing wrong, what I might need to do to improve that. I was never scolded if I got something wrong. It was always encouragement. And a lot of their own kids weren't really taking up the sport as much as I was interested in it.
Yeah.
And so in some ways I became the de facto child of theirs to be seen to be at skiing tournaments, skiing behind their boat, doing well.
Yeah.
Whether that was barefoot drags, which by the way is like there's a certain marker by which you have to step off your ski and be barefooting, and then the boat just goes to flat out, and the first person to cross the finish line with someone still barefooting behind it is the winner. And that's usually, it might be half a mile strip, 800 metres of barefooting, but at high speed, if you come off, it'll be an interesting roll on the water.
I was going to say.
Well, when you hit it at that speed, it's like
To come
concrete.
off, yeah.
So yeah, and there's a few injuries I suffered and back injuries that came from that. But
Yeah.
they were great years and some fond memories. And interestingly, in that season, you don't really see it till later. But if you pick up on familiar with Wild at Heart, John Eldridge, and his journey with Brent Curtis, they wrote a book together, The Sacred Romance, and it picks up on the echoes of your youth and what God might have been doing back there, weaving a golden thread that could point to something that's key in your journey today. If you could see what God was doing and link that up and invite him into that process to reveal what he's trying to show you. I think I'd always seen my childhood as completely lost, bereft, and just a horrible mess. But through the unsaved men in my life who were a grandfather and two uncles, God was fathering me through them and their investment in me in a way that was part of the rescue package that I didn't recognise for years.
Yeah. Wow.
And there was something powerful in that when it finally dawned on me. I thought, wow, oh God, you were never around. You weren't available. You didn't care for me back then. It's like, hold the phone. Yes, he was. He was actually using men who didn't know him from a bar of soap to be present in my life, to have an impact that I'll be forever grateful for.
Wow.
Which was, when that started to dawn on me, it's like, wow, how good's God?
Yeah.
Yeah, so very thankful for that. And some of the fondest memories I have is in that season.
I was about to say, there'd be some really good memories.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of thing.
I really wanted to carry water skiing forward into my own family. And there was a period I did own a water ski boat myself when I was in Townsville. But as you picked up on, it's, how did you get into water skiing with the backdrop you had? And water skiing is not cheap. The boat, to run the boat, to maintain the boat, the equipment, the fuel.
Yeah.
I was skiing behind a 350, V8 Chev that chewed a bit of fuel. But you need that kind of horsepower to do the work you want to do. Or if you've got a big outboard motor, like 300 horsepower, something like that, it's still going to chew some fuel.
Yeah.
So it's just not cheap and not possible for me to continue to do that, because in the end, I had the choice of keeping the job that I had, which was a good job at the time, and continuing on where I was. But by that stage of my journey, it obviously, I was starting to recognise there are issues and struggles here that I need to invite Jesus into, and I can't do that here. I can't hold on to all my toys.
Yeah.
And let Jesus do the work in me that I need to. And so, sadly, I couldn't continue to keep the boat and press on with that. I would have loved to have, and I've never had the chance to buy another one since.
Yeah.
But just in a roundabout way, very few sports are better than water skiing as a family sport, to keep a family together and to do things that are fun. Because the skill level never ends. You're always learning something new, or there's some new skill or some new trick that's invented that someone will want to go after.
Yeah.
So you start behind the boat on a tube that you have no control over, to eventually right up to the highest levels of skiing where you have to have a lot of control over what you're doing. So a lot of fun. Wish I could have pursued it, but very grateful for the window that God provided for me in the fashioning of my heart in areas that I didn't even recognise till recently. So
yeah, that's beautiful. My family on my dad's side actually has a bit of a background in water skiing as well.
Tell me more.
Yeah, so my great-grandfather had bought a holiday place. He was quite wealthy as well, on a lake in the south end of New South Wales in Womboyne.
Okay.
And so all my great uncles and aunties learnt to ski, and I actually got back to the lake when I was 14.
Yeah, that's
so
a
my
bit
uncle
of a
and
pilgrimage.
auntie, my uncle and auntie.
How old were you when you last saw it? Before
it was the very first time I saw it. So I grew up in Perth.
Okay.
And I flew over to my uncle and auntie who lived in Melbourne, and then
So
we road
you never
tripped.
water skied. They did the water skiing.
No, they did. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But I got to do it. So I think it was my dad's cousin who has a boat there. And so we got to go out on the lake, and I actually got up on the skis and did some skiing around the lake.
So good.
It was just awesome because it was the very place that they did it. My auntie just got on like a single ski and did all her tricks. Like she was really, really good. And my dad grew up doing that. That was like a holiday that my
How
family
was that for your
did.
heart?
It was amazing. It was really
Why?
good.
I'll interview you now. Why? Why was that good for your heart?
Yeah, it was. I had grown up, and every now and then, Dad would get out the slides, so the photo reels that were
So you
massive
vicariously
discs.
grew up seeing this.
Yeah, yeah,
Wanting
and
to
so,
do it.
Exactly. So I got
Wow.
to see the holiday house, the boats they went on, and we'd make it a bit of an event. So we'd have like uncles and aunties come over, and
wow.
we'd just go through some of the slides that had been taken by various uncles and aunties, and so we got to learn all about like our great uncles and aunties and
Wow.
great grandfather and great nana, and so to be able to see all of that in real life now, and to not just observe it, but to get in there and to do it. And I was, I was incredibly glad that I got up on the skis as well, because
Yeah, it's validated.
it was hard. Like it was,
Yeah.
but to be able to, just to experience the feeling of doing it. And I loved it. And I would love to take that up as well. If
I
I
wish you
got
go
the
half
chance.
ownership one day. If we ever make any decent money, mate, let's make a pact. We'll go halves in a water ski.
You buy the boat and I'll buy the skis.
Yep, done. Sounds like a fair deal to me. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I've got pressure from kids when I eventually moved down to Calcite, which is on Lake Jindabyne.
Yeah.
Dad, you're going to get a water ski boat when you get down there? And I'm thinking, well, wouldn't that be nice? But yeah.
It'd be awesome. Yeah.
Can I share a similar story in that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was with, so it was, for me, the lake is Lake Corunna near Narooma on the New South Wales south coast, because that's where my grandfather's extended family home was, shall we call it that.
Yeah.
It was a big home. Because he was a builder, every time more kids arrived, more grandchildren arrived, he just built another bedroom on it.
Yeah.
And so at the end of this time, I know this thing had at least 7 bedrooms, and big sort of rumpus rooms and other areas we could all throw kids in, and big yard, plenty of space, and that was the holiday home at Bay Street in Narooma. Great views of the inlet, and still, I remember as a kid wanting to learn to ski, but still too young to. We'd tie the ski ropes up to the boat as it was parked and pretend in the yard that we're skiing, because you're watching the uncles and the other family members doing all the water skiing, and so wanting to be part of that.
Yeah.
And then when I first got to learn to ski, I was 7 years of age when I was first given. I had to learn to swim.
Yeah.
So interestingly,
That'd be pretty important, I reckon.
Apparently, I didn't think so. I thought maybe why not? But that's why we wear life jackets. Why is this so important? I thought, but the insistence was you had to learn to swim before you could learn to ski.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it was water skiing that got me into swimming.
Oh, okay.
Because of having to learn to swim.
Yeah.
But to stick with the current tale, this whole era around water skiing and doing all that and watching and that was when I started to learn to ski. I didn't get a lot of male affirmation, so back to that kind of investment they were making to me. I've got this uncle who's coaching me and telling me yes and what I could do and how I could improve. And then if he's in the boat whilst I'm, if I get up for the first time on 2 skis and he's there cheering, from the boat.
Yeah.
Like to get that kind of fatherly, if I can use that term, an uncle in this sense, but this fatherly affirmation my dad later in life came to some swimming events. I don't know whether he ever watched me play football, but they certainly came to see me swim and do some, key championships that I was involved with. But swimming's hard work.
Yeah.
Water skiing's fun, right? You still have to be quite disciplined. There's a lot of hard work to become elite in that sport, as it is in any sport. But water skiing was always fun for me.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like with swimming, I had to follow this black line for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening and doing 12 kilometres, in a day in a pool to try to, it was torture, but apparently there's some kudos in it because you look good, so you better keep doing it.
Yeah.
Either that or my mother, was whipping me from the sideline because maybe she wanted to see me win. And for whatever reasons, the reality is that I climbed to a high level in swimming and even held a state record in Queensland, because there was some ability there.
Yeah.
But water skiing was where the passion was. And this level of joy of having these uncles cheer me on and feel like it was just like, wow, if you think of some of the messages that come out of the Wallet Heart movement, there's this, do you know you're the beloved son? That's the primary one for a boy's heart. Do you know that you're beloved son? Do you remember what the second one is?
Yeah. Do I have what it takes?
Do you have what it takes? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so these uncles from the boat cheering me on and telling me, you have what it takes. You got this. You can do this.
Yeah.
And then the coaching. And of course, there's always a new level of skill. So you move from 2 skis to 1 ski, right?
Yeah.
And when you pull that off, you've got what it takes. The cheering, the adulation, the applause, the pats on the back were just, so good for my heart. And again, God fathering me in those moments in ways I just never saw.
Yeah.
And then, of course, eventually learn to cross the wake or go through a slalom course and get through the course, or learning to ride a trick ski and the coaching involved in that, or eventually learning to step off a ski in barefoot and then learning how to do a deep water barefoot start. Angela, it's endless. I probably jumped a few levels there, but even just getting a beach start right. Yeah. And again, you can hear the applause from the beach behind you or someone in the boat doing it, and it's like, yeah, I got this thing. But again, just these key men who I'm fairly sure didn't really... I think Jesus was more a cuss word to them than a God that loved them deeply. But you know what? God still used these men to powerfully invest something into my heart in that whole kind of cowboy adventure stage of masculine growth. Yeah, cheering me on. So that was, and so that was a sweet time in my life from the age of 7 through to 18, and a lot of my training in water skiing was done there, and then there was bridge to bridge ski race events and all sorts of other stuff was going on. But in that window, there was something that poured into me that was cherished and loved and special, that I can now recognise was a gift from Heavenly Father to my heart. So push forward many years, I hadn't water skied for a long time, and apart from maybe someone as a guest going out with someone, and it's funny how the skills, they are perishable skills, but when you're still young enough and strong enough, it's nothing to suddenly just do a beach start from the get-go and then step off the ski. And I used to have some fun, actually. You'd pretend you don't know what you're doing, and someone would say, oh, have you ever skied before? No, could you show me how? And so you go out with someone for the weekend and you look like you're wobbling away trying to get up on 2 skis, and then you go to cross the wash and accidentally drop a ski, and the next thing you're on 1 ski, and they don't know whether to stop the boat and rescue, or will you make it, and then you give the signal to up the speed a bit, and then you put a foot out and step off and you start barefoot, and roundabout by then they've worked out, you've been playing with them, and maybe you do know what you're doing. But apart from fun weekends every now and again with someone else who owned a boat, I hadn't really water skied with family or with those key guys as they grew older and that pastime and that era vanished. But how long ago? It would have been, if I was 18, I probably got to about the age of somewhere around about, I was in my 50s, and I hadn't even really been back to Narooma.
Yeah.
And we had to go to Victoria. So my son, Matthew, he had done a discipleship course in Melbourne, Victoria, and he was graduating from that. So we went down to be part of that graduation process and to cheer him on and be there for him in that, as he wrapped that era of his life up. And we were driving back, and I said to Joanne, do you mind if we go via the New South Wales coast? She said, yeah, why? Won't that be a longer route? And I said, it would be, but I'd like to go through Narooma. And she said, oh, yeah, well, like where you grew up and had the fun with the family. I said, yeah. and to do that, it was seriously like a pilgrimage. And it even felt, I don't know, it kind of felt holy as I was approaching the outskirts, it's like this was big for me. It was like, oh, this is. There was something stirring that was quite. I didn't really know. She just noticed, my dear wife, who's quite perceptive. I'd gone quiet.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to process what my heart was dealing with as I approached it. But as I came into Narooma and then into the township itself and went past the house and, it was like, wow. But then we drove out to the lake. And so when I got to the lake, I just had to kind of let her, I had to walk away and just go. And it was quite emotional for me, stand at this lake, looking at this location and reimagining what this had meant to me. And I'm back in that. I actually bent down at the water's edge and I just picked up the sandy kind of soil at the water's edge at this lake and just let it run through my fingers. It was like, I had no words. I'm still not even sure today how to describe to you what it was, but there was some harking back to that era of what God had poured into me through these other men that didn't even know the one true God, really, I don't think.
Yeah.
By the fruit of their lives that I could best guess.
Yeah.
But he's using them as vessels to invest something into me that I think actually saved me. I mean, there was something there that solidified me to not go completely off rails.
Yeah.
There was some investment of fatherhood from those men that anchored me in some way, not to completely end up in a destructive mode that I could have gone into.
Yeah.
Which was, and I don't know how else to say it other than I think somehow God used him to actually literally, not save me as being born again, but as in save my life. That's where it could have ended up,
From going into...
Wow, I could have ended up anywhere that could have ended up in death. But it was but it was like, it was a holy pilgrimage. It was quite, I'm sort of even lost for words now trying to explain the impact, but it was just, I felt like somehow, it was orchestrated by God in a way that was quite powerful.
Yeah.
And it linked me back to that story of, the book entitled Sacred Romance. And there were links I was making there with that. It's like, when something suddenly gives you language hooks to something you've read that now becomes real. It's like, wow, this is part of the Sacred Romance where God was courting me back here. And I've never really noticed it till just now. And it was over 30 years since I'd been to that lake.
Yeah.
Before those links and those connections were made in my heart as to what he was doing back there.
Incredible.
Amazing,
Yeah. So what part of your life did you meet God?
Yes. Well, when so in the story from as a young toddler going through school, looking for, accolades in the sporting sphere, finished school, I was actually with my dad because there was some connection he made in the later years of my teenage period.
Yeah.
Where through outdoor adventure, there was some fun stuff that he taught and invested into me and my brother that I'm again forever thankful for as part of that, story of connecting. He probably fathered me there in ways in the adventure stage that I'm very thankful for. But at the end of that window, I was actually on holiday with him. I'd finished school. I'd applied for a few jobs, but I wasn't really interested in any of them. But I just put some applications in for different things.
Yeah.
I think because my mother was hounding me to do so. I'm literally on holidays with my dad and my brother in Sydney and down here, but still based in Brisbane. And Mum phones us whilst we're on holiday in Sydney with my father and says, there's a letter here marked OHMS, which is on Her Majesty's, service, which is the stamp for, public service stuff at the time of.
Yeah.
And she said, I think this is a public servant letter do you want me to open it? Didn't you apply for some jobs? And I sure open it, Mum, I'm like 18 and couldn't care less, but I'm having fun with Dad and brother down in Sydney doing stupid stuff and fun things at water parks and whatever. And then she reads out, she goes, Paul, you've got a job starting with the Lands Department in the morning. And I'm thinking, So what?
Wow.
So I'm 1,000 kilometres away in Sydney,
Yeah.
and it's Sunday night,
Hmm.
and she's opening this letter at like, I don't know, my recall is not that strong to the actual hour, but it's in the evening.
Yeah.
And she's telling me that I'm supposed to be at the Lands Department for orientation in this new role. I've scored the job to start as a learning, to become a registered valuer through an internship, it's like a cadetship, I think would be a better word,
Yeah.
for the Lands Department. And I'm meant to be at the Lands Department 9 a.m. the next morning, Monday in Brisbane. And, Mum's kind of squealing the other end of the phone, you need to get back for this. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I kind of sat there and I didn't know what to do with that. And my dad just said, mate, like a job in the public service is a pretty good job. He said, you don't want to try and make the dash back and just, we can always do another holiday down here, but what do you reckon? And I think what appealed to me more was trying to make a midnight dash, like the Cannonball Run.
Yeah.
Can I get home in time was probably more interest to me than actually getting back for the job.
Wow.
And back then, my dad had, I think, in missing out on our earlier years, often would want to buy things for us to make up for his absence.
Yeah.
And he actually bought both myself and my brother cars as gifts when we each turned 18. I managed to convince him to buy me, it was for any, rev heads out there that are interested in Fords, it was an XE Falcon. We're talking 1981 here.
Yeah.
XE Falcon, 4 on the floor, 4-speed. It was a 351 cubic inch V8 Cleveland motor with an S-Pack Ford Falcon. It was a great car for an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
One I should never have had. And I'm thinking, yeah, let's make a midnight dash, back up there. But that meant my brother had to jump in the car with me and we'd go back. And we flew. I shot off. I went hard. But I'd been awake since early that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I drove well into the night. And somewhere I could sense I was starting to get sleepy. And we both learned how to drive cars in the bush with my dad on properties, going out doing, hunting, fishing, whatever we were up to. So we both knew how to drive a manual car. But I realised I can't stop driving or I don't make the deadline. If I pull over for a sleep, I won't get back in time.
Yeah.
And I said to my brother, mate, I'm not going to make this drive. I think I might have to put you in the wheel and let you keep driving. And he says, but I don't have a licence. I said, no, but you can drive. He goes, are you okay with that? I went, I've got to be. I've got no choice. If I pull over and rest, I won't make it. We've got to keep going. I said, look, if you just drive for half an hour, I'll have a nap,
all you need.
So I'll just have a kip in the back seat. Anyway, he goes, okay, let's do it. So he jumps into the driver's seat, we set him up, and I go up in the back, and he takes off. My last instruction to him was, mate, just do the speed limit, please.
Yeah.
Don't get pulled over. 100 Ks, that's it. He goes, no price, no, don't. I remember there was a corner. What woke me up was we went into some corner, and the G-forces drove me into the door of the car with my head, and it kind of woke me up.
Yeah.
And as I came to, I realised my brother's driving. That's right. How long have I been asleep for? And then I sat up in the back seat and I looked over and he is doing some awfully fast speed, which I'm not sure I should mention here in this podcast, is the speed he was actually doing.
Yeah.
And I've just gone, what are you doing? And he swings around, takes his foot off the throttle, and the car just starts to come back from the speed of light to an appropriate speed. But my goodness, he made some ground up.
I'm sure he would have.
Yeah, I don't know. Only by I don't even know whether to give God credit for this, considering how many laws we were breaking. But he got us there. The territory covered was significant. I jumped back in the car. We get there, and I ended up in that job for quite a number of years and got qualified as a valuer. But yes, a tale to tell for. I'm not even sure why I started that story, but in my dad, in that journey, in that connection of time, there was real a lot of fun with my dad. And in those years working in the lands department, I got transferred to Rockhampton, back to where we are. Where'd that go from there and how did I come to Christ?
Yeah.
I've ended up in Rockhampton. And some of the story here, by the way, I'm raised as a Catholic, I should throw in.
Yes.
I think I know Jesus, but
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the practices of the Catholic faith and that, but I didn't really know Jesus. And I've got some good Catholic mates today that actually do know Jesus and are Catholics. But then for me, as a Catholic, it was, you do the sacraments, you have to do things in religion to get home, right? Was pretty much what I absorbed.
Yeah.
So I come to Rockhampton and I move into a house with a bunch of guys who are all Baptist. Funny story getting there, but to shorten it down to the fact that when I moved in, the only reason they picked me because the only other person that applied was someone who just got out of Etna Creek Prison, which was the local prison in that central Queensland area around Rockhampton.
Yeah.
So I'm transferred to Rockhampton. I'm living there. First time I'm out of home. It's a fairly debaucherous situation, the house I'm in. These people are wild, and I'm thinking, this is not for me. So there was enough Christian residual value in my heart, having been raised as a Catholic within that church system, that this isn't right. I asked God to move in with these guys. They interviewed me, and they took a while getting back to me. And I found out the reason why is because the only other person that applied was a guy who just got out of prison. But they figured I was probably a better bet than him. But shows I obviously didn't interview that well.
Yeah.
I'm in this house, and the three other guys are all Baptist guys. They go to church twice on a Sunday, which I thought was nuts. They have a Bible study on a Wednesday, which I thought, these are fanatics, these dudes.
Yeah.
And one particular day, a gentleman who lives in that house, whose name is David McQuire, he shows up with his sister, Joanne McQuire. And they've just been to a wedding, and they're waiting for the reception, and they've dropped in at home. And I remember seeing this young lady thinking, hello, I should go over and say hello, introduce myself. And it turns out when this young lady was nervous, she would talk a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking after 25 minutes, I think all I got in was, hi, my name's Paul, what's your name? I didn't get another word in for 25 minutes, which is difficult to do around me. And I remember thinking, my goodness, whoever marries this woman, poor bloke. Turns out it was me many years later. But that was my first introduction to my wife when I first met her.
Wow.
But remember that Bible study they had midweek?
Yeah.
One time I got stuck at home. Like I always get out of the house because these guys would. I tried to keep arm's length between me and their religious activity because I thought they were a bit out there.
Yeah.
So one Wednesday night I got trapped at home. I forgot what night it was, and I thought I heard a car pull up downstairs, and doors opening and closing, and voices. And going, oh no, it's Wednesday. It's their freaking Bible study. I've got to get out of here. I literally raced downstairs to try to convince them to back out and get out of there.
Yeah.
Until I saw it was a car full of females. Four of the most beautiful women I've ever seen.
Yeah.
One of which happened to be Joanne. And they said, I'm sorry, are we in your road? Have we blocked you in? Were you going somewhere? No, I've just come down to greet you. I'll see you back upstairs. And I flew upstairs thinking, I know I've got a Bible here somewhere. I thought, I want to join this Bible study group. They didn't tell me there was hot women at this thing. And so, ironically, lust got me into this Bible study group.
Yeah.
And they very wisely just let me sit on the fringe of this thing and pay attention to their sharing. And I just was intrigued about what they would talk about, the scriptures and how it reflected on their own journeys and where they were at. And over time I started to realise I called myself a Christian, but watching them, and there was something clearly different.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful that they allowed me to be a fly on the wall and observe that without trying to push me. And then one day they just said, after several months of this, to their credit, you ever heard the term in evangelism, make sure you go for the low-hanging fruit?
I've heard you mention
that.
that.
Yeah, it's the idea of it's silly to try to pick fruit when it's still green, right?
Yeah.
It's a heck of a thing to get it off the tree to start with.
Yeah.
And if you do, you'll probably ruin the fruit, and you've picked it too early and it's not going to be edible. Well, key in evangelism is actually knowing when's the right time to lead someone to Christ. Not go too early, not to go too late, etc. So these guys timed it perfectly. I watched enough, I'd seen things, I was curious, I had questions. And they said, Paul, we've got a guy coming to our church who's what we call an evangelist, and he's going to be staying here in our house.
Yeah.
He'd love to have a chat with you. Do you mind if we introduce you to him? So they didn't lie to me. They weren't trying to, except I didn't have a clue what an evangelist was, but I didn't want to let them know that, because I thought, yeah, sure, no problems. What the hell's an evangelist? But anyway, sitting down with me, he just showed interest in me, asked me questions about me, and really just let me share my story. And as that unfolded, he finished up with saying, Paul, I've just so enjoyed meeting you, and I would love to get to know you better. Can I invite you to come to these boys' church on Sunday? I'm going to be speaking at the evening youth service, and I'm going to be talking about Jesus, and I would love you to be there to hear what I have to say. I thought, yeah, I'd love to go. Simply because he was a man who was showing interest in me, who was a safe man, who was actually caring enough to ask questions about my life. And I thought, yeah, I'd love to be there to hear what you have to say about Jesus, And somewhere in him sharing that message that night, I don't even remember what he talked about. I can't even tell you what the altar call was or how he led to it. Yeah. All I remember is getting out of my chair and walking to the front because I wanted to know the Jesus he was talking about.
Wow.
And I gave my heart to Christ, and genuinely. But the lead-up work had begun long before then. It actually started back with those uncles investing in me, my dad reappearing later in life and fathering me in ways in certain stages that I greatly valued. And then this, this guy shows up at the end of a season where I've been allowed to sit in a Bible study and just watch and observe without being asked difficult questions about what I thought about this or do I agree with this. I just got to sit and watch and listen and learn. And they'd play an Amy Grant track in the background whilst they're making breakfast or dinner or something.
Yeah.
Thinking, who's that artist? I like that. Who's that? And I'd listen to the lyrics and think, what? There's music like this out there? So it was all of that married up in a way that became the perfect formula for me to find Jesus in a genuine way that was the start of my journey with Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that was the 17th of August, 1986.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How about that?
Yeah.
So that's where I came to Christ.
So what was the follow-on from that? Did you kind of mentioned Joanne, meeting her through the same Bible study?
Well, when she calmed down a little bit and, wasn't so nervous around me, suddenly I got to appreciate her. And she just was a pretty girl, bubbly, and I was very interested in trying to go out with her.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit too forward. And remember the whole see me, love me mask?
Yeah.
So if I start now in this youth group, just because you come to Jesus doesn't necessarily mean anything's healed, right? So my name's now written in the Lamb's Book of Life, but I've still got every mask on. I'm still the big pretender. I still don't like me very much, and so I've got to wear all these masks to be liked by others. And if I'm in a youth group crowd, I'm trying to be as loud and as funny as I can to get everyone's attention, so I'm accepted, right?
Yeah.
But that actually freaked her out a bit, and I might have been making everybody else laugh, but she was generally a little bit afraid of me because it's like she's a conservative, quiet Baptist girl who's suddenly got this maniac running around chasing her, And so, so the early days weren't so great. But also, I think she was a little unsure about how genuine the salvation, journey was for me. But as she started to recognise that actually this guy's he's coming to church regularly, he's now coming to church twice on Sundays, he's part of this Bible study group, he is genuinely wanting to follow Jesus. She thought, okay, maybe he's a little safer to look a little more closely at. And I think I just wore her down, really.
Yeah.
And she said yes to going out with me, and then eventually we started a relationship. And but I think, interestingly, and she would probably agree with this if she was present to share. It's the fact that, by the way, you should get her on for a podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Hear the other side of the story. She, the assumption was, because he's now born again, we're equally yoked, and therefore he would be okay to go out with and consider as husband material. She had a far more stable upbringing than me. No one's perfect, right? But she had a lot more things sorted out in her life than I ever did. And when we went out together, and then I moved away in my job as a valuer, I got transferred from Rockhampton, where I met her and where I came to Christ.
Yeah.
I got transferred to Charleville in southwest Queensland, about 800, 900 kilometres away.
Wow.
And then the relationship had to then continue via, phone calls, or me driving or riding a motorbike in, as I did those days, to come back and visit her occasionally. So I was now conveniently some distance away. And it's amazing how you can hide all your flaws when you're not that close to someone.
Yeah.
And so, so when we got married, and when I proposed, she said yes. And we got married, but she thought she was marrying someone that was not just saved, but someone who would protect her love. And interesting, you always marry someone you think will probably, provide everything your heart needs. And often we look for people that, what was I looking for when I married a woman? I wanted someone who would cook, clean, and comfort me.
Yeah.
Because my mum would always cook everything for me, clean up everything for me. She'd yell at me and abuse me, but she'd always pick up after me. I figured surely there's a wife out there that'll do that for me. And if there's any other comfort she can provide, well, I'll take that too.
Yeah.
Turns out that a woman's heart needs a little bit more than that, Levi. I've since learned. She was looking to me to be some sort of protector and something, life that could provide a connection and a safety where I could be something that she really needed Jesus to do for her. And in some ways, both of us were looking for comfort in the other in a way that only God could provide. So, I don't know if you've ever heard me say, nothing builds character quite like marriage. If I could remember the author I once stole that from, I would tell you. Might have been Tim Keller.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, but
So
it's
you
true.
found that
Nothing
out.
builds character quite like marriage.
Yeah.
And but this one's from me until the children come along.
Yeah.
Because it's like just two people whose masks start to falter, and then you're faced with the real person you've married.
Yeah.
That can be a bit of a shock. And even today, courtesy of the position I hold in the ministry I'm in, and we do a lot of, investment into people whose marriages are in some strife. The number of times I would hear people say, "Paul, I've married the wrong person," or "They changed." They're not the same. It's like, no, they're the same person. You just didn't have the skill set or the discernment to know how to look deeper and look beyond the mask to see what was really going on. And it's how would you know how to do that if you're too busy holding your own mask up and hiding behind it? Yeah. So that's exactly where Joanne and I found ourselves in a perfect storm, trying to wrestle out what the heck happened here and what do we do from here. They were difficult days. But
did you have any father figures who were maybe had some kind of spiritual depth as well to guide you through those early years of marriage?
No, I didn't. In fact, a lot of the people that were trying to help, would I be allowed to say, were very religious men?
Do you want to unpack that?
Yeah. I think, and to be fair, I was this for a long time because I was fathered by these type of people. So when I came to Christ, the church I was a part of, that I've been won to Christ in, it actually had a sign out the front saying all the things they were against. Yeah. We are anti-charismatic, premillennial, but this, all these things. So when you walked in the door, it was like a warning sign saying, if you don't agree with this, get out of here. So I thought, how to welcome the unsaved. But I don't think I really had the lenses to recognise it at the time,
Mm.
but there was a lot of control. There was a lot of performance orientation and a lot of religiosity around certain views from Scripture that suggested that, minimising the roles of women and almost making them second-class citizens, really, in that particular church.
Yeah.
With regards to, say, these men, they were just legalistic. They had a certain view on Scripture, and if you deviated from anything that they understood to be truth and the way it should be understood, or a certain behaviour that you should be operating in, they'd come down on you pretty hard.
Mm.
And I thought, well, this is what it means to be Christian, right? This is what you have to be. And so that's the model I picked up. But your question was, were there any good father figures in my life around then to mentor me? No. But the ones that were mentoring me were probably helping mould me in a way that wasn't helpful.
Right.
But in time, my job took me away from that township.
Yeah.
And then eventually out of that influence. And that was, a bit of a rescue. But you carry that with you. And now you're judging everybody else who's not, But it's funny how you tend to question your own theology and your belief systems and what you hold to when your theology is no longer working for you. And so once Joanne started to see behind my masks,
Yeah.
and the only really way you get to really know somebody is when either you have to live with them or you work with them.
Yeah.
And so because, I don't know, have you ever heard me say it's only over time, under pressure, do you find out what someone's really made of?
Yeah.
So, Joanne, over time, under pressure, got to see the real Paul Ryan, who she probably wished she hadn't married. So through a whole circumstance of events, she was really going to leave me.
Yeah.
And I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Why would you want to leave me? I genuinely was shocked when she was planning her departure. And only by the grace of God did he actually communicate to her that he could do something with this marriage if she would just, stay in the battle. I'm just really pleased he didn't tell her how long that would take because she'd already planned her escape, where she was going to go, what she was going to do and how she was going to go about it. And I came back from a pretty selfish boys fishing trip to a woman who was going to plan her exit in that window and then God intervenes and she doesn't. But she lets me know that she's not happy with how things are. And I think for the first time ever, the fact that my wife was going to leave me, it really shook me up. So I thought, I think most of the times, any other time she tried to tell me there was something she needed me to be working on or something I could do better or a way in which I wasn't very helpful or caring in, I'd always sweet talk her or manipulate her, convince her the problem was hers, not mine.
Yeah.
Whatever was needed so that I didn't have to change.
Yeah.
And I was pretty good at it, way too good at it. And so most people who are controlling and they're like bulls in a china shop sometimes, but the dangerous ones are the ones that can fashion a bullet and put it into someone else's hands to fire at the intended target. So there's no gun smoke residue on your hands. I was way too good at that. And so in all that scenario, and again, their skills developed from a very early age, learning to survive and to control and to evade and to protect. But when my wife starts confronting me with these things, I'm not very receptive to this because that means I've got to let go of all these things I've put in place to, protect myself and survive. And I'm not willing to do that. But when she tells me she's leaving, interestingly, it's like I always wanted to be in a marriage for life and not ever get divorced. And I'm thinking, it's like she's going to leave. She was going to leave. Why would she leave? It's like, so it just forced some deeper questions to be asked. Why would she leave me? Like, am I not as polished as I think I am? It was enough to shake me.
Yeah.
And that's when a real deeper journey began for me. And that's when I went looking for mentors. I
Yeah.
have to say, weren't easy to find. There was no, I mean, the ministry I'm a part of now that has some tools to offer to help wasn't available in this country. Most of the things that were offered to me were more like self-help programs,
Yeah.
which weren't going to cut it. So it wasn't until God brought a man into our life who was part of the Vineyard Church. And if you're familiar with the Vineyard Church, it launched from John Wimber's church, if you know John Wimber.
Yes.
Or ever heard of him. And in the 1980s, he had a church in Anaheim that he called the Vineyard Church in California. And from there, other churches in branched out, and the Vineyard Church eventually became a denomination, and there are Vineyard churches here in Australia. And some excellent churches. But at that time, in that season, with John Wimber at the helm as the father who launched that movement, there were some amazing things they were doing in, miracles and healings and people being set free. And I, was very interested in listening to the speakers that came from that era, and what they were sharing was giving me hope. I didn't have to do this by myself. There were others who could lead me to a God who could bring the change that I knew my heart needed to save my marriage.
Yeah.
And this conference, so the Vineyard team sent a team out to Australia, and they're doing a major conference in Sydney, and then they sent teams out after that to regional areas. One of those was to Townsville, and my church was running that regional conference in Townsville, and they were looking for people to billet or host some of the people who were coming to run the conference from the Vineyard. And I immediately thought, I want to host one of those people here. It was like, maybe there's something here that person could bring. And Cameron was a bit sceptical because I don't think she thought at that stage anything was going to change me. And so but she sort of reluctantly said yes. I went and told my church pastors I'd love to have one of these people if you could. They said, oh, who would you like? But I said, I'll just trust you with whoever you think needs to have a place to stay, and we'll look after them. And I remember walking out of that thinking, oh my God, what have I just done? I'm bringing a crazy person in my house. I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be... So the level of anxiety, it's funny how I don't think I ever really understood just how anxious I was back in those days. If you'd asked me, are you anxious? Nah, cool as a cucumber. But it's like, what have I done? So then I have to go into control mode because, all fear and anxiety is really driven by the, control. Or controls can also be a fruit, but the point is I need to now control this. What have I done? This guy's coming to my house. He'll ask questions. What do I do? I remember picking him up from the airport with Joanne on the way to the airport. Let me ask lots of questions of him. Keep him talking.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get to ask me anything or you anything, okay? You got it? She goes, yeah, okay. Picked him up. Oh, how are you? Who are you married to? And how many children do you have? And all small talk, right?
Yeah.
And we get home from the airport in Townsville, and I pull up in the driveway, and I get out of the car to walk to the back of the car to get his bags out. And suddenly, at the boot of the car, I can hear through the back of the cars with the boot up, and I just hear him turn around, and he goes, and with a deep Southern accent, because he's from Covington, Louisiana. He turns around, and he says to my wife who's in the back seat, Joanne, do you suffer from fear? I remember thinking, I left him for 30 seconds to get his bags out of the car. And I raced back around, bags in hand to try to get him inside the house. And Joanne's just... I thought, what is going on here? He was the one that then sort of suggested we go inside. And anyway, the short of that story is he ministers to Joanne in a way that was amazing and quite powerful. I still tried to intervene at some point with some religious questions like, what do you mean fear? He was trying to get her to repent of not trusting God because of her fear. I think, what? Fear's an emotion. What do you mean get her to repent? What are you doing? Foolishly, I said, where's that in Scripture? So he says, well, just about every book of the Bible says do not fear, do not be anxious, and do not be afraid. And then he starts quoting them. Bang, bang. After a couple of minutes, okay, I got the picture. It's biblical. I guess I won't ask any more questions. He ministered to my wife that night in a way. Now, just again, if you back up a fraction, my mother was very fearful and always locking the house and always, just overly cautious. And then my wife similarly is like, I'm thinking all women are like this. This is just how God made women, right?
Yeah.
Terrified of everything. So that's what I'm thinking is normal for femininity. But that night, after he's prayed for her, it was a very gentle prayer. And she said, yeah, I'm terrified, I'm frightened of this, I'm frightened of that. And she prays this gentle prayer and asked the Lord to forgive her. And then he just starts to pray over her in a very gentle way. And there's some yawning going on. I thought, she's tired. And then she sort of gets up and says, oh, well, actually, I think she even said, I really am tired now. Thank you so much for praying for me. I need to go to bed. And she just walks in and just goes in and climbs under the covers and she's snoring. Actually, sorry, honey, you weren't snoring. She was asleep within a minute. And I'm thinking, what? I mean, every night the routine before bed would be, I've got to go around and make sure everything's locked. If she's not doing it, I'm on her behalf.
Yeah.
And even if we went out to watch a movie or something and we come back to the house, the routine was I had to get out of the house first, go inside the house and search under beds, in cupboards, everywhere, and then come back out and give her the green light that the house was clear. There's no one's broken and there's nobody in there hiding. It's safe to come in.
Wow.
And we had like deadlocks on everything. So to watch her get up from this table after being prayed for and then just calmly walk into bed and collapse into bed, windows are open, doors are open, breeze is going through, and my wife is unconscious on a bed. I'm thinking, what's just happened? And then this guy's going to bed, he himself tired from a long journey. He says, oh man, I gotta go to bed, I'm tired, but I think Jesus has got something for you, brother. And I've been thinking, oh, wonderful. As he's going to bed, I'm there going, stay away from me in the name of Jesus. So there was a whole conference. It was a wonderful week. I learnt much sitting in the teaching last night at our place. He's flying out the next morning and nothing has really transpired. And I'm somewhere between disappointed and thinking I've missed the boat. From the first night, what I saw the first night, and then what I saw all week, I was getting more nervous, kind of hoping no one comes near me.
Yeah.
But then as the week went on, I started to realise my window for any sort of transformation is closing. And then it's the last night, he's at home and he's saying goodnight and he's heading for his bedroom door, where he's staying at our place. And literally as he reaches for the doorknob, I remember sitting behind him at the table just thinking, well, that's it. I was taking him to the airport in the morning, it's done, And he stops and he goes, oh, man. And he races back to the table, opens up his Bible and goes to Deuteronomy 23 verse 2, which in the Old Testament says that no one born of an illegitimate marriage will enter the assembly of the Lord, even down to the 10th generation. And he slides across, he goes, man, I think Jesus gave me this verse for you, man. Like, does this mean anything to you? And I'm thinking, if you remember earlier, I talked about how, my mother nearly had me aborted because she had conceived me out of wedlock. And I'm thinking, how would this dude know that? Well, he can't be talking to my father because he, at this point, has passed away. I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure Mum wouldn't have told him because even though she was still alive, how would he even know to find her or contact her who she was? Secondly, I approached her and asked her about it, and she blew up in my face. So it's not as though it's information she readily wanted to give out.
Yeah.
So there was only one option left, and that is that God's told him. And at that time in my life, I'm a conservative Christian. God doesn't speak. I'm a cessationist. We only have the scriptures. And I'm thinking, what? And so I've watched him do this at the start of the week with my wife, with amazing transformation in her heart at that point in her journey. I've seen some incredible stuff during the week with others that have been prayed for, and now he's sitting in front of me saying, does this verse mean anything to you? I thought, well, as a matter of fact, I was born out of wedlock and therefore would be illegitimate in the sense of the word that the scripture's pointing to. And he goes, okay, man, well, that's like a curse we got to break, brother. And I thought, So I'm not really on board with this, but it's funny how when you get desperate, your marriage is on the line and nothing else is working, and the theology you've held to for so long, those doctrines have become more fences to hold me in and trap me than ever bring me freedom. I thought, what the heck? What do you want me to do? I literally just surrendered. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
He just very simply said, well, some of these Old Testament prophets, Ezra, Nehemiah, Daniel, they all spoke about how I and my forefathers have sinned. I thought, okay, that's biblical. I can run with that. He says, if you would just pray, saying, Lord, forgive me for the sins of my forefathers and for my own. And he just literally just verbally painted the prayer for me, and I just followed suit.
Yeah.
And man, I'm telling you, I felt after he prayed and went to bed, something lifted off me. I felt something like a gush of wind actually depart, is all I can describe it as.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there thinking, what was that? Because again, where I'd come from and where I was at in my journey, Christians can't be affected by the demonic, because once you're saved, the Holy Spirit resides within you. Therefore, how can the enemy influence you? Blah, blah, blah. Turns out what a load of rubbish. I knew I was saved. I had an assurance of that, but suddenly the enemy in this curse broken off my life, I hadn't cried. I think by that stage I'm around about 28. I couldn't remember the last time I cried. I'd have to go back to childhood.
Yeah.
Something in me had hardened, and all the masks I was wearing, and I remember just shedding tears. And I walked outside. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but conservative saints don't always readily like to lift their arms in the air to worship a holy God as an act of surrender in worship. You know, and you never sing a chorus more than twice, and your hands are always down. You know, I'm out on the front lawn of where we're living, arms in the air at some ungodly hour of the night, belting out some praise song that I've long since forgotten what it was. And I woke my wife up, I think. I remember Joanne came and said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's like, is he worshipping on the lawn? Who are you?
Wow.
And I've got tears, and she go, are you? She'd never seen me cry. And I don't think it was then, but it might have been the next morning. She said, what happened? And as I'm talking to her about it, interesting, just a little sidestep, I had told her, let's wait 5 years before we have children, because Joan wanted to have kids straight away.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, well, let's wait 5 years. So we can really get to know each other and build a really good bond. But I was lying through my teeth. What I wanted was her to stay in a job so we had two incomes and I could buy more toys to feed all my ungodly comforts of things I wanted to do to escape my pain. I didn't think that would sell too well, so I couched it in, let's spend some time getting to know each other. And we got to the 5th year and she wanted to start having babies, and I was thinking, well, that's not going to work. I mean, like, if she's not working, I don't have as much money, and you know, there wasn't a great compassion for the whole concept of having children at that point. Well, on the other side of this prayer, the things I remember really powerfully was that I suddenly knew that I was wanted and that I belonged. It wasn't to do with salvation. It was around, it's the whole idea of I couldn't enter the assembly of the Lord, part of the verse. There was something of me that didn't feel like I could really enter the Holy of Holies. I wouldn't be able to say it like that at the time.
Yeah.
But there was something that wasn't allowing me to enter into a deep intimacy with God, because if you feel illegitimate, you feel like you don't belong. Right?
Yeah.
And so just but I was like, I suddenly knew I belonged. I knew that I was Dad's kid. Something had shifted. And then whatever was somewhere in that mix, I didn't want to have children. And somewhere in there, whatever was part of God's deliverance in that moment, the next morning I said, honey, as I'm sharing all this with her, I said, can I pray over your womb? And she goes, sorry? I said, I need to apologise for holding back on this whole area of starting family. And I said, I would love to pray over you. And I think she was just kind of shocked. Then I put a hand over her when I started to pray and ask the Lord to bless the fruit of her womb, my wife just burst into tears. And I think only then I thought, wow, this is bigger than I thought for her. But there's something had powerfully shifted in me. And so,
Wow.
and that would probably actually was a key moment in pursuing, well, what does this look like to offer the freedom up to others, which you could say the rest is history, considering the ministry I've been a part of for the last 27 years. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you want to take a quick break and then we can maybe get into that?
You not sick of me?
No.
All right, let's do it.